Hello, hello. Welcome, friends. My name is Lynn, and today I have a flip of the Spellbinders December 2024 Club Kits. If you're new to my channel, my flip videos are where I create at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card. I'll show all 4 cards that I'll be making, and because my flip videos do tend to be on the longer side, if you don't have time to watch the entire video, just hover over the timeline and you'll find timestamps so you can skip straight to just the card that you want to see me make. I'll be featuring the Glimmer of the Month, the small and the large dies of the month, clear Stampin' Die of the month, 3D embossing folder of the month, the stencil of the month, and even the bonus freebie that you get if you are a deluxe caboodle kit subscriber and you get all of the club kits. Without further ado, let's go ahead and make these. Okay, so I am going to start off with my flat card. And for my flat card, I will do some glimmering. The Glimmer of the Month is this really large plate that has a beautiful floral design, and it just about covers maybe half, if not more, of an A2 size card. So A2 measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the design is really, really beautiful. When I first saw it, my original thought was I am going to glimmer directly onto my card base, which I rarely do. But this being my flat card, while I don't define my flat card as strictly just the card base and just a single layer of cardstock, I'm a little bit more loose in my definition of a flat card because ultimately the spirit of it is to create an easy mailer. So my definition is actually your card base plus at most 1 layer of cardstock and flat embellishments, if any at all. So my thought was that I would glimmer the design directly onto my card base, the front of my card base, and an A2 size card will fit through just fine on the glimmer machine. And then, because this is such a large glimmer plate, it doesn't have a coordinating die that cuts out the entire outline, but rather the coordinating die cuts out just the border of the design. And whenever I see a border die, I always think to make a shaped border edge on my card front so that even when the card is closed, there's going to be some portion of the inside of the card that is visible. And for that inside portion that's visible, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if I had the inverse of the foiling? So instead of a hot pink foil onto white, I have Aura, which is kind of an iridescent silver, foiled onto hot pink card. And I was going to use 2 of these together on the same card. So I did also have this one, which wasn't a perfect foiling, but it kind of turned out nifty. So I like how that one turned out. Maybe I'll use it in my live stream on December 1st when this video comes out. I try to live stream every month with some crafty friends who are also Spellbinders influencers, and we just craft and chat with the Spellbinders club kits. It's great fun, and whatever day the first of the month lands, we try to get together. This is what I was going for, and I think that still looks neat, but it felt a little bit too busy for me. It felt like it was just too much of the florals, and because it had so much pattern to it, it felt like it really just pushes the design, the foiled design, into the background almost, and it almost requires, because it was so busy with both halves being full of that floral design, that you would need something like big and substantial to put over top of it. And the what I ended up going with was I'm still going to use that very hot pink on the inside, but I'm just going to leave it plain. And I feel in this way, it actually helps to make that design stand out more because there's more contrast between the foiled panel and the other half, the inside half that's just color. And it didn't occur to me, that the design would be super busy if I tried to use it for both halves of the card, but I have an extra panel and I'll just craft with that later. And even though the Glimmer of the Month does come with 2 sentiments, I don't know why, but I didn't think to actually foil those sentiments multiple times and in multiple different colors and combinations, but I didn't have the combination I wanted. So instead, I just used a sentiment from the clear stamp of the month. And in my stash, I have a fairly hot pink VersaFine Clear ink pad that I think matches pretty well with the cardstock that I chose. So I'm just going to use that. And again, I'm going to hang that off the edge just to create an even more sort of interesting border. Now onto my layered card. And don't worry, I'll show a recap of all of the cards close up at the very end of this video. For my layered card, this is another card that actually took a couple of twists and turns. So I'm assembling at the moment the extra die set that comes if you are a Deluxe Caboodle kit subscriber. So the Deluxe Caboodle is a fabulous value for money deal because you can get all 10 club kits at a super discounted price. So if you are, I haven't worked out the math to figure out, how many kits you would essentially get for free by getting the Caboodle. It really just depends on which ones you're interested in. That's the nice thing about the Spellbinders Club kits because, depending on your budget, depending on the types of tools that you like to craft with, there's a little something for everybody. So there's stencils, there are stamps, lots of different die sets. If you like to hot foil, there's the Glimmer of the Month, which I just used. If you like to better press, there's a better press club. There's a wax seal club for folks who love their wax seals. There's a stitching club, which is fabulous if you love to add that bit of texture to your card. So it's really great that there is something for everybody and for all budgets too, because all of those different club kits do range quite a bit in their price. But as I mentioned, your best value for money is to get them all. So if you do that, there are some extra bonuses and extra goodies that you get. And this cute little monster is this month's freebie. The card base, I did originally do some stenciling. The stencil of the month is great. There's multiple different stencils that you can use in combination with one another, but this one is kind of standalone, the heart pattern. You might have noticed I just glued right over top of that. So this is one of those twists and turns. I kind of didn't like how that stenciling turned out ultimately. And I actually try again to get the look that was in my head when I first started to stencil that bit. So if you hang out to check out my pop-up card, you'll see me try it again. And this card actually was meant to be the front of my pop-up card. And the reason why it's my layered card is because the pop-up card that I make actually features the large die of the month, which has a pop-up mechanism. That's why you see a portion of it on my desk right now. And I've die cut everything for that pop-up mechanism. But what didn't occur to me at the time to check, and when I only found out after I finished making the card front and assembling the pop-up mechanism, you actually need a top folding card or the large die of the month if you're going to use it as the pop-up mechanism that it's designed for. So this being a side folding card is not going to fit the bill, but that's okay because it turned out to be a really lovely layered card. Now this is the glass board magnetic ruler. I don't use it as a ruler at all. I've pretty much only ever used it to hold things down just like I needed to do a moment ago. And it's not that the thing is heavy, because usually you know how you put something heavy onto whatever you're trying to glue so that it lays nice and flat. It's not heavy, but the magnet is really strong. And so it does a really good job of holding down whatever it is you want to keep flat, because the magnet is so strong, it can actually still have a great hold even with all of those layers. Really, really fun. So I've added my monster, and I stamped a little sentiment from the clear stamp of the month to finish that card. Okay, next up is my interactive card. This is a card that, I'll be honest, I think I made it way more complicated than it needed to be. So if you're thinking that too, you don't have to leave me a comment. I already know. So here was my thought. So a lot of times the way that I approach the club kits and my flip video in particular, but really just crafting in general, is when I see a product, whatever it happens to be, there's usually something that pops into my head that tickles me, like that just makes me excited to craft with that. And with the flip videos that I put out every month, it's no different. So when I saw the small die of the month, which is the set that you're looking at here, the first thing that popped into my head is to make a shaker card that is see-through and a bit of a peekaboo. So again, a little bit of a trend going on with this flip, because my flat card also has that peek through element to it, and I think that's a lot of actually what inspired the flat card, because I had the idea to do this card first, and so it was already in my head to have the back or the inside of the card peeking through to the front. And so I took that large H die, cut straight through my card front, and I'm going to use the what falls out of it. Instead of using the same white, I just die cut it a second time out of gray. And so this is going to nestle right back in because it's using the exact same die. Now, instead of making just a regular shaker, I thought, why not make an infinity shaker? And that way I have like a lot of shaker bits that floating around, and the whole front of the card can be a shaker. So what I did was I cut some white cardstock to be larger than A2 in size. So this is larger, it doesn't matter exactly how big it is, but 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 is the dimensions of an A2. And I just cut something about, I don't know, 3/8 to 1/2 inch larger on all 4 edges. And the reason is so that I can die cut the same H through this extra panel here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to low tack tape these pieces together and trim off the 4 edges. So there's a lot of different techniques, different approaches to lining up 2 panels and getting them to essentially die cut in the exact same position. This is just one of many ways to do it. So essentially, however you prefer to do die cutting so that you have 2 panels that are have the same die cut through them in the exact same location, do what works for you. This, to me, I wanted to try to see if it was easier than how I typically approach this, and I like doing it. It is a little bit of extra cardstock, but it's pretty easy to do. Now, I've got my acetate here. This is just plain old pretty thin acetate. I get it off of Amazon from the brand Graphics. I really love this brand, and I have it in a ginormous roll that I just cut down as needed. And I'm going to cut 2 panels of acetate. One is A2 in size exactly. And then the second panel is larger than A2. And the piece that's larger than A2, I am going to make what you would generally maybe see pre-made as a full front shaker pocket. Really easy to make your own shaker pockets. So all I've done is scored just 2 edges, one of the sides and either the top or bottom, doesn't really matter which. I'm going to fold those 2 to start. And then where the 2 score lines intersect, I'm going to miter cut that corner. So that just removes a little bit of excess plastic so that when you wrap this around to the back, it won't have a lot of bulkiness. And now I'm going to insert my panel, my A2 size panel, into that corner of the the 2 sides that are already scored. And I'm going to score just to the edge of that for the other 2 edges, because the panel is exactly A2. So you can't really score your acetate at exactly A2 dimensions, because you need to leave some room to actually wrap that plastic around your panel, your cardstock panel. So this way you kind of can score and measure it to fit. And I'm going to put a little bit of double-sided adhesive on the glue tabs, because that's what we've created, is 4 glue tabs on all 4 edges. I did miter cut all 4 corners, so I cut off a little bit of a triangle so that all of those glue tabs can fold nice and flat and you don't have excess plastic in the corners. Because I want this to be completely see-through to the inside of the card, I have to line the back of this with another bit of acetate so that we have a completely enclosed pocket that our shaker bits can float around in. Now, here's the thing that I realized after the fact. If you pour in your shaker bits and you've poured them in behind your white panel, then the way that I die cut that H, there's a large portion of white cardstock at the bottom. And so if I poured in my shaker bits behind that white panel, pretty much all of it's going to be hidden until you shake it, which that might be something that you prefer the look of or the experience of, meaning that initially maybe you don't even see the shaker bits because they're all at the bottom behind the white portion of white cardstock at the bottom. But that's not exactly what I had in my head when I was envisioning this card. I actually wanted all of the shaker bits to be visible, and I wanted it to be nice and plentiful. And so for that look, and so as not to have to use like a lot of shaker bits to really fill past that white chunk of cardstock at the bottom, here's where I realized, because once I put those in, I was like, oh, they're all hidden by the bottom of my panel. So to fix that, and if you want to avoid it initially, you're better off with just gluing your white card panel to the clear acetate that you put on the back of your shaker pocket. So I'm going to do that after the fact here. And I managed to get some double-sided adhesive at the bottom, and that helps to attach my white card panel to the back piece of acetate. And now I'm going to pour my confetti bits into the front. And because the white panel is glued down, at least a little bit, and I'll add a little bit more at the top here, it's not, the confetti bits aren't going to find their way behind this white panel. So if I had to do this over again, I would actually glue this white panel entirely to the acetate panel first, and then close off my shaker pocket. But I got there in the end. So this took a couple of twists and turns, but ultimately I got the look that I was going for. And I did still end up pouring in more and more confetti bits. Now, one of the confettis that I've added, it's sort of iridescent, so you can kind of see that against the pink, it has almost like a greenish, a yellow-green tint to it. And then if you tilt it and it's against the white, you kind of see a more pinkish, maybe purpley tint. So I really love iridescent anything for that reason, because when you tilt it in the light, you always get something like a little bit different depending on how the light catches it, and also sometimes what is surrounding it, because sometimes what's surrounding it could make it look a different color as well. So now all I have to do is just line this up with my card front so that the aperture that we've cut through everything lines up perfectly, and you can see straight into the inside of the card. So super way more complicated than it needs to be shaker card. It's, I guess, an infinity shaker, I guess also a peekaboo. So a peekaboo infinity shaker. Now, with the extra die cut H pieces that I cut, you have so many different options for where and how to place this. So I've die cut this gray version, and my thinking behind it is to actually put this on the front or the outside of my card. And then I'm going to add some of the really fun floral that come with the die set, because besides this H, which, you know, by itself I think is just gorgeous, but it has been designed so that in the die set you have some individual elements that you can use to really make this much more floral, because right now it just has the leaves and the greenery. But if you look at the H, there are some portions that have what appears to be a very perfect circle at the ends. And those are sort of glue spots where you can add some of these florals. And in this set, there's some really small florals, and then there's some larger florals. There are some, there's one die that cuts out all of the leaves. And so you can die cut those in whatever colors you'd like and layer them on top of that H. Now, the other thing that's kind of neat is this H isn't just a very ornate H. It's actually part of a sentiment, the word hello, which I think is kind of fun and very versatile, because you can use it for really every occasion, or just because and no occasion at all. The die, though, it does have to be cut twice if you want to spell the word hello, because there's only one L on the die plate, and you need two to spell out the word hello. So either you can die cut everything twice, or just do a partial die cut and get a second L out of it. One of the nice things about those letters is that I hope that Spellbinders actually does an alphabet die set with that. It's kind of similar to, is it similar to the bold? There is another alphabet die set from Spellbinders that I think has some detail like this, but there's in the center, like in the middle of the letters, there are some additional cuts or scores that give you horizontal lines through the letter, and it's only through the middle section, which I think is kind of interesting, different, and unique. I wouldn't mind having an entire alphabet with that lettering. It's kind of cool. And I did die cut it multiple times out of multiple different colors, and even out of a pattern paper, but ultimately I decided to actually use the same color cardstock as I have on the inside of the card to complete the sentiment hello. Now, to dress up my H, I've die cut. There's some really, really small itty bitty flowers. I kind of like those the best. For some reason, I didn't want to use any of the larger flowers, so I used the smallest and then the second smallest flower. And at first, I was looking for like those little circles to, which are kind of little glue pads basically for where you can place your flowers. But they're just suggestions. If you don't want to glue a flower there, you don't have to. It can be whatever you'd like. And I initially just placed, I think, the 5 of these small little flowers onto some of those dots, and then I added more because at some point I just ignored those dots and I just added them where I wanted them. And so you can definitely feel free to use this however you'd like, however many flowers you'd like, where you'd like to place them. You can just do what feels right for the composition of your card. You don't really, I even left some of those circles without anything on them at all. Now, to complete the word hello, I found it easiest to place the E and the O first. That way I can kind of center the whole thing across my card. So I was looking for the O to be the margin on to the right of the O and the margin to the left of the E. I was looking for that to be spaced evenly. And then I just fit the L's in where they needed to go in the space in between to get an even spacing between all of the letters. For me, that seemed easiest, but there's lots of tips and tricks for lining up your letters. You could use a mat that's sort of sticky and then glue it down that way. You could use some press and seal. Now, on the inside, I didn't want to waste this and I didn't want to save it for another card. I actually like the look of having the white H on the inside. Even on the outside, it's kind of nice. It actually adds a little bit of a highlight. And then when you open it, you still see the H, which I thought was kind of cool. Okay, so now onto my pop-up card. I'm going to first start off by assembling the monster. This is one of 2 monsters that comes with the large die of the month. And it's super, super cute because I remember there was a monster release earlier in the year that had a couple of other really cute monsters. So kind of nice to see that, because usually it's the other way around if I think about it, because usually I will see something or get something as part of a club kit, and then later that will inspire like a regular release from Spellbinders that is similar, not identical. That way, if you are a club subscriber, you might still want to get the new release product. But usually it's inspired, you see it first as a club kit, and then you see it later, some derivation of it later as a regular release. I feel like this is the first time where I've seen the concept of, building your own monsters as a regular release first. And I think was it a dancing die set also? And now I'm seeing it as the club kit. And I think that's kind of cool. It's nice that, all the really fun, cool stuff isn't strictly reserved for club kits, because these monsters and the previous monster release, I think, they're pretty adorable and they're really easy to assemble. And I have to check, but I'm wondering if they are about the same scale also, so that you can actually kind of like a potato head, you can mix and match the body parts. Because, for example, this monster, it has a body that includes the arms, but the legs are separate. And then there's also a second set of legs that can be used. Oh, wait, this monster the legs and the body are combined, but the second monster in the set has separate arms and legs. And the add-on or the freebie that you get if you are a Deluxe Caboodle subscriber has a different set of arms. So if you have these different collections and they're all the same size, you might be able to kind of mix and match all of the parts and create your own little monsters. Okay, so the large die of the month is an actual pop-up mechanism. And I flirted with the idea of not using it as my pop-up card because that's such the obvious thing to do. And I tend to like to do things that are not obvious just to give you some more inspiration and ideas for how to get more out of your products. But how could I not put together the pop-up mechanism on my pop-up card? So I'm starting off with this, I'll call it the base of the platform. It forms a hexagon, and there's one die that you cut twice to form the front and the back. And all you have to do is the die cuts and scores glue tabs. So the way that I like to do any gluing when I know something needs to lay completely flat is I glue one glue tab down, make sure that it's stuck, make sure that it's lined up exactly where it needs to be, and then I apply adhesive to the opposite end of the opposite glue tab, and then I just close the item, whatever it happens to be. Sometimes it's the card. In this case, it's the base of the platform. I close it down flat. And wherever the glue tab lands is where it needs to land in order for that item to eventually fold down flat again. So I always like to do that because when I don't do that, inevitably I have something that's just a little bit off and it doesn't glue completely flat. I'm kind of hit or miss on that. So I've learned through experience, through my own, understanding of myself, that I'm much more successful if for anything that needs to be glued, that needs to fold down flat, to glue it flat and folded, as opposed to trying to attach it midair in its 3D dimensional form. These little decorative panels that I've cut out, it's a single die that cuts 3, and you get the 3 pieces that you need for these little sections of your platform. And you can decorate as much or as little as you like. So you can decorate the back, which I'm just going to leave plain. I haven't stamped anything onto these, and I'm intending for that to be the back of the platform, which likely most people won't even look at. But in case they do, it's going to have a little something for them to look at there. And then the 3 that I've stamped onto, I am going to take this for the front of my platform. And I really appreciate the fact that the clear stamp of the month actually has stamps that are sized to fit these little decorative panels. So you get Love, XOOX, Be Mine with a little heart, and then if you look a little bit further down the stamp set, there's the solid 2 hearts. That would fit too. So you have 4 different options for different things that you can stamp into these little panels. Okay, so now I am going to create the sort of the top of the platform. And this is really clever. Now, this pop-up mechanism might look familiar to you because there's lots of die sets that will help you to achieve the same type of mechanism, but I've never seen one that approaches it in this way. This piece looks really unusual because it's multifunctional. Now, at the time that I made this, I did not have the instructions from Spellbinders for how to construct this. So hopefully I did it right. But whether or not I did it according to their instructions, it worked. So the key to me figuring this out was I realized that the lines here they're actually somewhat perforated. And so that gave me a hint that because it's such a weird shape and it looked bigger than it needed to be to fill the top of our platform. And it occurred to me, well, there must be a reason why it's perforated and not just scored. And if you remember the die sets from the Amazing Paper Grace, her score lines were actually perforation lines. But that's really typically not the case with other Spellbinders dies. They put solid score lines in as opposed to perforation lines. And the reason that this is designed this way, I think, is so that you have a lot of different options for how you put together the top of your platform. So included is a die that cuts out these what I'll call pop-up stands. And there's a single die, it cuts out two that are the same size, and then one that's slightly wider. So the slightly wider one can fit exactly in the center of your hexagon platform, and then the two shorter ones can fit in this folded area that I created. So what does that mean? So basically, you can form the top of your platform such that it only has one pop-up stand exactly in the center. You would just take, if you're looking at the die as it's on my magnetic sheet, you would just take the left portion, cut that out twice, and use two of those. You could have a platform like what I'm doing that has two pop-up stands, one in the center and then one either in front or behind. And in this case, you would use one of your die cuts, use the left side of it, the second die cut to form the second half, use the right half. And there's the panel, the solid panel in the center, you would need that in both cases. Now, when you go to glue this, I put the bottom, that's the portion that glues the two halves together. I put that flush to the bottom of my base. So what that will result in is that the top of this platform will be slightly recessed inside the base. And you'll see what I mean in a moment when I actually glue this down. But I wanted to pause here so that you can see how I'm lining this up and figuring out where the glue tab that attaches the top of the platform needs to get positioned. Because on that large die set, included with on either ends, that small, about 1/4 of an inch or so, that's a glue tab. And that's what attaches the top of your platform to the base of your platform. So by figuring this out, I am able to kind of figure out, and liquid glue is really good for this because it gives you some wiggle room to kind of nudge things in place. So that's how it's going to look when it's finally positioned. But as I mentioned, anytime I do anything that needs to fold flat, I do like to just get the one glue tab in first and then adhere the second glue tab. But I don't like to adhere it in its popped up or dimensional 3D form. I like to adhere it when it's flat. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to put glue on this little glue tab, fold everything down flat as it should be when the card is closed. And then when this springs back open, it's going to still pop up just fine. But more importantly, when it folds down flat again, it will actually fold flat. But as I was saying, you have options for the top of the platform. You can either do one pop-up stand directly in the center. You can do two pop-up stands, one in the center and one either in front or behind. Or you can do three pop-up stands where you have the center, something in front, and something behind. And if you want three, what you would do is you would take two of the die cuts off of the right edge as it's being shown. So the one with all of the extra score lines or perforation lines. and put those two together. So it's really clever how much versatility Spellbinders has designed into this platform to give you a lot of different options for how you want to, I guess, build up your little scene here. And the pop-up stands, when I glued them in, I was taking note of what I wanted to attach. So for the pop-up stand in the center where I attached the heart, I glued it such that the small little bit of the pop-up stand was visible on top of the platform, because I knew that the heart, at the base of the heart, there's only a small little stretch of cardstock, and it fits a little bit better so that you don't see the pop-up stand as much. In fact, the heart will completely hide that little bit that's popping up. But for the monster to get attached to the platform, his little feet, they are not, they're wider than what that little section provides. So what I did was turned it upside down so that what's glued into the platform is the more narrow portion, and what's visible above the platform is wider. That way I have more area to glue the monster's little feet onto. So with the pop-up complete, now I'm gonna work on the front of my card. And this is what I had in mind when I saw the stamp of the month and the stencil of the month. I wanted to use them in combination with one another, especially this alphabet stamp, which has one stamp that gives you all of the letters except for I, O, and U. And the second stamp is what I'm stamping now. It has I heart you, or I love you, where the heart replaces the O. And my thinking was that I wanted to have a little bit of a halo effect of these hearts from the stencil of the month. And I just want a very light sort of something around it, but I don't want the full panel to be stenciled. I just want this as a little bit of a halo surrounding. And what I didn't like about what I did on my first attempt, which ended up being the layered card, was that I stenciled first, and then I thought, well, if I stamp over this, it's going to be really busy where the stamping overlaps with the stenciling. At least this way, by stamping the sentiment first, I can avoid stenciling the little hearts where the lettering is. So it just makes it a little bit easier to read. And that's why I didn't go with the rest of that design on my earlier card, which ended up being my layered card. But as I mentioned, that was actually intended to be the front of my pop-up card, until I realized that my pop-up card needs to actually be a top folding card. So this little cutie is the second monster that you get in the large die of the month, and it has all different parts, and you've got little legs and little arms that you can position onto this little guy. And it has, I think there's actually 2 sets of horns that you can use or not. You don't actually have to use any of these parts, really. You can decide what parts you want to use. Like maybe he doesn't have feet. You could definitely make that choice and customize it a little bit, because the monster that comes as the freebie for Deluxe Caboodle subscribers, that one doesn't have feet. And that one has a different set of arms. So maybe if you wanted, you could use those arms on this monster if you have both sets. Now that the front of my card is more or less complete, I'm going to attach the pop-up mechanism into the inside of the card. So there's a second set of dies that cuts out the these 2 pieces. Just fold on the score line that the die puts in. The smaller section is what gets attached to your platform base, and you want to attach it to the middle section, as I've done here. Then you apply glue to one of the tabs. Just make sure you have this aligned so you know what's going to be visible as your front versus your back. Position it right up to the score line, but not crossing over it so that your card can still fold flatly. And then I apply adhesive to the other glue tab and I fold my card closed. That way I know everything will fold closed in the end. If you're using liquid adhesive like I am, give it a little bit of time to dry. I was just really excited to open it and see. Plus, by opening it when your glue hasn't completely dried, you might move some things around, but at least you can double check anything that needs to be shifted around before that glue sets. And so if everything looks good to you, definitely burnish and give it some time to really dry and grab before you exercise that mechanism even more. And with that in, now I can add my my little monster. I wanted to do the pop-up mechanism first while everything on the outside was still nice and flat, especially since I had a suspicion that I will need to use some 3D glue gel on this monster, and I didn't want to burnish and be folding flat while I had something that has glue gel behind it. Because then I would have had to wait for that glue gel to really harden. So I left this little monster to last. I've got some low profile foam on the main body and head, I guess, of this little monster. And then for the parts that kind of extend a little bit outwards, I'm using Kalau 3D glue gel. I bought this glue gun on Amazon for like $8. And I thought, is this basically the glue press, but for my 3D glue gel? So far, I'm really happy with it. It works really well, and I'm loving it. I don't think I could put regular liquid adhesive in it because the tip is fairly large. It's larger if you have the glue press. By comparison, it's larger than the glue bottle tip that comes with your glue press. There's one that's a smaller opening and there's one that's a larger opening, and it's even larger than the larger opening. Okay, so here's a final look at the 4 cards that I made today. This is my flat card, which features the glimmer of the month, and the sentiment comes from the clear stamp and die of the month. The dies do cut all the way around. It has a nice close cut around the sentiment. This is my layered card, which features the 3D embossing folder. I love all of those hearts. So dimensional. This little monster is the free gift if you are a Deluxe Caboodle subscriber. And again, the sentiment comes from the clear stamp of the month. Then my interactive card is an Infinity Peekaboo Shaker card. And it features the small die of the month, which gives you this gorgeous, very ornate, very lacy H, complete with the rest of the letters to spell out the word hello. And there's even more florals and greenery that you can add if you wanted to really spruce up and make that H even more floral and decorative. So I really like how that one turned out. I definitely made it more complicated than it needed to be, but in the end I got there and I like it a lot. Then my final card is my pop-up card, which features the stamp of the month, the stencil of the month, and the large die of the month, which gives you 2 monsters, both of which are featured on this card. So this is one of the monsters. And they are really cute, really easy to assemble. And the cool thing about the large die of the month is you get this pop-up mechanism, which is so versatile. You can form your pop-up mechanism so that it has 1 glue stand or pop-up stand, 2 pop-up stands as I have it here, or even 3 pop-up stands where you could have something in the back as well if you wanted. Really awesome. And this is the second monster, and the heart also comes in this set. The sentiments that I stamped on the platform base, those are from the clear stamp of the month. Thanks for checking out my flip video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll leave links to everything in the description box below if you want to check out the club kits. And until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.